Hi, folks, and thanks for your time. My verse for today is John chapter 15 and verse 5. I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Would you be willing to accept a challenge? I hope so. And the challenge is simply this. I want you to try and memorize that verse. I'll give it to you again. John chapter 15 verse 5. Now I'm reading from the New International Version. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Actually, I've given myself a challenge. You remember way back in March, whenever the first lockdown started, I began to do those wee posts. We put them out on the WhatsApp group and eventually on Facebook and so on. And the catchy little name that I gave them was the BBBs. I called them Ballymoney's Bulletin to Braniel. Obviously, the reason for that, we were in lockdown. You were locked in Braniel. I was locked in Ballymoney, and there we were. Then, of course, as time passed and October came round and we were all looking forward to October, and we thought really things were beginning to tail off. We were getting back into church, Sunday services were resuming. And I thought, well, look, I'll drop out these little Braniel's Bulletin from Ballymoney, or whatever we called them, the BBBs. And I thought really it had run its course. I stopped doing them, but I think maybe the time is coming, obviously. Where are we now? Right in the middle of another lockdown. And having chatted this over with some of the folks, I think really that maybe the time has come whenever we could do something more constructive. Actually make it a source of outreach, make it a source of teaching, and even continue it on when, God willing, lockdown is over. The pandemic is under control and things are not as bad as they are now to keep us out of church and so on. So maybe we could actually utilise Facebook and utilise other aspects of social media. So here's the plan, and I'm thinking of wee catchy names again. I want to have something ready for posting on a Tuesday morning and something on a Friday morning for you all to browse in your own time. And my thinking is that on Tuesday we will have Tuesday's challenge. How does that catch you? Tuesday's challenge. And then Friday, what you're going to have is Friday's free time. Just wee catchy things. Don't mean all that much, but my thinking is that the Tuesday's challenge could be just that. A challenge for us to think a little bit more deeply about a particular subject and to continue that on over a period of time. And Friday's free time again, well, that would allow me freedom to do something different, but still in the hope that we might be able to make contact with people who don't have a church connection. Well, there you go. You've had your first Tuesday's challenge, and like I say, I hope you're up for it. What was it? John chapter 15 and verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. Now that verse obviously meant an awful lot to a writer that I have quoted many, many times in recent years. He is an American preacher, and his name is Henry Blackaby. And the book that I have quoted from is a book called Experiencing God, and he relates a story at the start of that book about a group of churches with which he was associated, probably going away back here now to the 1980s. And at that time, and he's talking about Vancouver in Canada, and he says in his book that he has been in charge of this group of churches who are aware that in Vancouver there's a major event planned, whatever the year was, but it was in the 1980s. This major event was called the World's Fair, planned to be in Vancouver, planned to last from the month of May right through to the month of October. And of course the expectation was that as many as over 20 million people could be visiting that city over that period of time. And of course these churches were challenged. They were challenged with this event coming. What can we do? What's our place in all this? What do we have to do? What does God expect us to do? And so again, he says that around about 2,000 people began to pray. What should we be doing in light of all this major event? And so the story goes on that 2 years before the fair was about to commence, they set a budget. Now wait for this. They set a budget, and of course he's talking in Canada terms. He says that they set a budget of over $200,000. Now that's vast. No matter how big your church is, no matter what size your group of churches is, $200,000. And all the people were clear, they were certainly made clear that this is only ever going to happen if we pray. I'm going to quote what Blackaby writes. He says this: "Can you operate a budget on prayer?" His answer, yes. But when you are attempting something that size, you're attempting something that only God can do. And then he goes on, he says, what do most of us do? We set a practical budget which represents what we can do. And then, of course, the quotation goes on. But what do most of us do? We set a practical budget which represents what we can do. Then we set a second budget, which is, and he calls it like a hope budget or a faith budget. And of course, what have you got? You've got two budgets, the ones that we can do, but then you sort of look and say, well, maybe God could do this. But of course, you can imagine what he's really getting at. We revert back to the one that we can do by ourselves. We do not really trust God to make a practical difference in what we do. Now, you can agree with that, you can disagree with that. That's what he says. And truth to tell, in my experience, I think probably in my life, maybe in the life of the churches that I've been involved in, we tend to kind of fall back on what we can do ourselves. The long and the short of it, actually this church raised not just over $200,000, which was their original budget, but something like $260,000. Over that period of time, almost 20,000 people became Christians. And again, I quote, God accomplished it with a people who had determined to be servants and were moldable and available for their master's use. Moldable and available for their master's use. What a word, moldable. Reminds me of an old song. We used to sing it years ago. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. And here's the bit. Break me, melt me, and mold me and fill me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Mold me. Make me what you want me to be, Lord. Now, Blackaby's book called Experiencing God, it's actually a study book, and already you're getting a flavour of the fact that the whole study is a challenge. How we long in our church in Braniel that we might be able to make an impact in the community where we're placed. Those folks in Canada, well, they reached tens of thousands of people. I think we'd settle for a fraction of that amount. But of course, we can't do this ourselves. Elaine, our praise leader, has been teaching us lots of new songs during lockdown, and how wonderful it is, what a blessing it is to be able to have been able to keep that fellowship going on. And hey folks, if you're not part of that fellowship, lockdown sadly is still going on for a while yet, and we'd love to see you part of that whenever those situations arise. One of the songs that Elaine has been teaching, and I think it's very relevant in this context, it's that one, yet not I, but through Christ in me. All these things that we've been thinking about, you've heard us mentioning them time again. Even before lockdown, we've talked about the Belfast City Council project, and those of you who are from Our church and even the neighbouring churches will know what we're talking about, that it's a huge project, not time here to be able to describe it. But we've been involved in that. And then there's another course that we've been involved in called the Organic Outreach for Churches. We're working on one currently, the Daniel's Dilemma. And I'm saying if you'd love to join in those prayer and praise sessions, yes, and even in these studies too. But we're as we're thinking about all these things, we're saying to ourselves, will any of them ever come to pass? Will we ever see any good come out of these things? Can our church ever change to meet the challenges that are everywhere around us? Well, that's it, isn't it? I said at the start, are you up for the challenge? Here it is, the first of them, Tuesday's challenge. Maybe at the outset, the biggest challenge facing each of us is to make sure that we're right for God. Not right for God. Well, yes, right for God, but right with God. I think it's true to say that if we are right with God, certainly He will consider us right for Him. He will have something for us to do. And I want to close with another verse. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to learn it, but I do want you to look it up. I want you to read it for yourself. And it will certainly challenge you. And it's 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 14. Remember the wee song I said, Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. And are we up to the challenges? Can we face the challenges that are all around us? Here's 1 Corinthians 2 and 14. The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but considers them foolishness and cannot understand them, because they are discerned only through the Spirit. God bless you in the meantime, and God willing, I'll have Friday's free time ready for you for the end of the week. But as I say, God bless and hope to see you soon. Bye.